Hello everyone, and welcome back to yet another episode of MCM Motor City Mania. I'm your host, David T. Pike, and as always, we're diving in. So here's the thing, folks. For today's other episode, I'm literally gonna be giving you guys a whole bunch of content for you guys to sit on, because I'm telling you this right now, there was a lot of stuff that happened yesterday, and to try and put it all together into one singular video is just simply something I am not going to try to do, and I know for a fact you guys are not gonna want me to do. So it's like, listen, I'm gonna give you guys a media blitzkrieg today. We are going to be talking about a lot of content today. So again, let's get into this content. So over the first day of the NFL tampering period, in which NFL teams, could officially start negotiating deals, they could start making free agency deals, they could start actually pulling out trades, they could start doing all these different kinds of deals and negotiations with other teams and with other players, there were a lot of big-time moves and splashes that were made by a multitude of teams. Again, just to kind of go down all the different moves, all the different, things that happened during yesterday's first day, if you kind of would be, I'd call it, like free agency. You had the Giants, who traded for Brian Burns from the Carolina Panthers. You had the Raiders, who went out and signed Christian Wilkins to pair with Crosby. You had the Falcons, who went out and got their next franchise quarterback, supposedly, in Kirk Cousins. You had the Panthers, who signed Robert Hunt, the best guard in free agency, to a mega deal. And you had the Rams, who went out and stole Jonah Jackson from us and gave him a pretty decent contract. So there were a lot of big-time moves. There were a lot of big contracts that were being handed out that a lot of teams were getting in on yesterday for the first day of, the tampering period for the NFL free agency period. And I'm going to say this right now. For a lot of teams, they went out and they made worthwhile moves. They went out and they made acquisitions that were very, very good for their team, and they were active. And they did it to bolster and improve their rosters. Now, that is everybody else. However, though, the Detroit Lions, I will say this. This is one of those situations where I have to word what I'm about to say very, very carefully. It was not surprising that the Lions were quiet yesterday in terms of moves or free agency, because we have to understand something here. Ever since Brad Holmes has been the Detroit Lions GM, the Lions have not exactly been the type that goes out into free agency and makes splashes. If anything, they're kind of very methodical. They're very, very precise about what they're going to do. They're not going to go out and make a whole hell of a bunch of noise. They're not going to go out and make splash signings. That's just not something that Brad Holmes and the Lions have done ever since, Brad Holmes and Dan Campbell took over. However, though, I am going to say this. For the first day of the tampering period, the Lions really only made two moves to acquire new talent. And I'm going to say this, based upon the reaction that I saw from a lot of Lions fans, whether it was from Twitter, whether it was from Facebook, whether it was even from YouTube, it was by far not even close to what Lions fans were expecting or even wanting. Like, I'm telling you this right now, from what I saw from a lot of Lions fans, they were not at all too pleased about the Lions' lack of, I would say, moves. In fact, if I wanted to call them anything, like I have in the title, they were lackluster. Because for a lot of Lions fans, these were just moves that we were not wanting, or they were not being expected from a lot of Lions fans. Now, what moves am I specifically talking about? What I'm talking about is the Lions going out and signing defensive end or edge rusher Marcus Davenport, and then making a trade for the Bucs cornerback Carlton Davis. Now, let's understand something here. These two guys in and of themselves are interesting names. I'm not going to deny that. There is something about them that is of interest. There is something about them that you can definitely have a positive outlook on. But, again, being a Lions podcast, you kind of have to take a look at everything for what it is, and you have to take a look at it for what potentially people are looking at here. So what we're going to do really quickly is we're going to take a look at both of these guys. We're going to break it down here and see why Lions fans are, I would say, having a problem with these moves. So let's take a look at Davenport first. First thing we know about Davenport is he's 27 years old. The second thing we know about Davenport is that he got a one-year deal from the Lions that's worth $6.5 million at the base salary, but it has a potential maximum value of $10.5 million. What does that mean? It typically means that there are some type of an incentive or there's some type of clause that's in the contract that the player has to meet in order to get the remaining value that is supposedly attached to said contract. And what's the final thing we know about Marcus Davenport? The final thing we know about Marcus Davenport is that he played for the Vikings last year, and prior to that, he played for the New Orleans Saints. Now, what exactly does this signing mean for the Lions? What exactly does it mean for us Lions fans? The best way I can describe this contract in pretty much the move that the Lions made, it's very much just like the Emmanuel Moseley re-signing, because you have to think about it here. This is a move that has all of the earmarks of it being a very low-risk move for the Lions, but it has high reward potential. Now, I'm going to be honest. When we made the move to re-sign Emmanuel Moseley, I was not at all a fan of the deal because it's like, listen, cornerback is one of those positions we desperately need to upgrade, we desperately need to get better at. Why are we bringing back a guy that has been proven that he cannot stay healthy on the field? But it's like, hey, you know what? I'm going to trust Brad Holmes even if I question the deal. Again, I'm human. I have the ability to question something, but yet still trust what that person is doing, even if I don't understand it or necessarily don't agree with it. I'm going to pretty much be in the same ballpark when it comes to Marcus Davenport here. It's like, listen, I don't really understand the move. I'm not really a big fan of the move. But again, I still trust Brad Holmes because, hey, Brad Holmes is the one that's gotten us to where we are right now. It's kind of hard to argue with the results when it's like, listen, we were 3-13-1 our first year. We then vastly improved to 9-8 next year, the year after that in 2022, barely missing the playoffs. And then this last year, oh, that's right, what did we do? We got to 12-5, won 2 playoff games, and got to the NFC Conference Championship game. I think I'm going to give Brad Holmes the benefit of the doubt, even if I may not agree with the move. But you have to understand this. The idea, as far as I can see it, is, again, like Emmanuel Moseley, this deal with Marcus Davenport, it's a prove-it deal because you have to understand something here. Why is this move being done? Well, the biggest reason why is because Marcus Davenport has a connection with the Lions because of the fact Dan Campbell and Aaron Glenn were in the New Orleans Saints ball club at the same time he was. And they were there when he was playing really good for them. The best season that Davenport had for the freaking Saints was in 2021, which obviously was the first year that Glenn and Campbell were here. But that's what the Lions are hoping that they can potentially get out of Davenport because in 2021, Davenport had his best season in the NFL so far. He had 39 tackles that year, and he had 9 sacks. So, for me, the deal makes sense from that perspective because it's like, okay, you're taking a low risk, high reward kind of a deal, and you're hoping that maybe him getting paired back with Campbell and with Glenn is going to potentially bring out the best in him. So again, that connection and that hope is why this deal makes sense to me because it's like, okay, the Lions clearly knew they were going to need an edge rusher help. They were going to need somebody to add to that edge rusher rotation. If Davenport can recapture what he did with the Saints, then that's a potential positive upside to the deal because it's like, hey, there's a lot of upside to this deal because there's not really a whole lot of financial risk for the Lions. And if the Lions could potentially get Davenport to return to the 2021 form he had, then overall the deal would look kind of smart. However, though, the negative side aspect to this deal is that if you take a look at Davenport, he's never played a single full season as an edge rusher. Take a look at every year he's been in the NFL. He has never been able to stay fully healthy for a full season. And then to take a look to more recent stuff, when he was with the Minnesota Vikings, he only played in 4 games, so he was a bust with the Vikings. And the reason why this is such a concern, the reason why the deal is the way it is because you have to take a look at his history as far as injuries are concerned. He's had multiple surgeries to his hands or hand. I can't figure out if it's both hands or just one hand, but he's had multiple surgeries to his hand. He's also had multiple surgeries to his shoulder. And he's had various foot and ankle injuries. So it's like, listen, this guy has major durability concerns, which I can tell you this right now. For a lot of Lions fans, that's definitely something that really irritates them about Brad Holmes because it's like, why do we keep going after guys that have a lot of durability concerns? Why do we keep going after guys that have a big history of injury? That is something that I've heard from a lot of Lions fans, whether it's been on Twitter, Facebook, YouTube, whatever. My own fans are like, listen, what is the big deal for Brad Holmes going after players with injury history? We want guys that will be able to stay on the field, not giving guys chances to potentially redeem themselves and then being left out in the cold. So that's the situation with Marcus Davenport. That's why a lot of Lions fans are none too pleased about that whole acquisition, especially when a lot of Lions fans would have much rather preferred that we went out and got, Hunter. Sorry, I was trying to think of the name there for a minute. My brain is kind of scrambled right now, but, I'm trying my best to keep up with everything. Now, the second move that we got was trading for Carlton Davis from the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, who is a cornerback. Now, what did we have to do to get Davis? Well, the Lions traded pick number 92 in this year's draft. So they traded a third-round draft pick to get Carlton Davis, and they received 2 sixth-round picks for Davis. They received a 6th-round pick in this year's draft from the Bucs and a 6th-round pick in 2025 NFL draft from the Bucs. Now, what about the cap hit for Carlton Davis? Well, according to his contract, he has 1 year left on his contract, which has a $14.5 million cap hit for the Lions. So it's like, okay, you traded a third-round draft pick for this guy. His cap hit is going to be $14.5 million, and the only thing you got back in return other than the dude was 2 sixth-round picks. So let's understand something here. This was by far the biggest news of the day for the Lions and for the Lions fans. But again, I'm going to say this right now. For Lions fans, this was simply not what they were expecting nor really wanting to hear. Again, many Lions fans were wanting and or expecting that the Lions were going to make a trade potentially for other cornerbacks that we had heard that they were interested in. Such ones primarily were the Chiefs' L'Jarius Sneed or the Browns' Greg Newsome II. That was what we had been hearing. There was no warning that the Lions were potentially wanting to pull the trigger on Carlton Davis. And I'm going to say this right now. The fact that we did pull the trigger, I think for some people was welcome news. It just wasn't the news that they were wanting nor expecting. Now, here's the real question. What can we realistically understand about Carlton Davis? What is there to understand about him? Well, I'm going to be honest. It's a bit of a mixed bag when it comes to this guy. The positives about this dude is he's got good size. He's 6'1", he's 206 pounds. He's excellent sized for a cornerback, especially when you're talking about dealing with the big physical wide receivers of today's NFL. Plus, on top of that, he's young. He's only 27 years old, so there's plenty of tread left on the tires. He's also got a Super Bowl victory because he went to the Super Bowl in 2020 when Tom Brady took the Bucs to the Super Bowl and won. So, okay, he has Super Bowl experience. He's also been a starter on the outside for the Bucs for quite a while. He started multiple games for them, so he has a lot of experience. Then on top of that, he has a decent amount of, I wouldn't say a decent amount, a decent number, a decent stat line when it comes to allowing wide receivers to get receptions against him. His reception percentage allowed against wide receivers over the course of his career, according to PFF, is a 57.9%, which is substantially lower than what you would want a wide receiver quarterback tandem to have against a cornerback. So it's like, okay, there's some positives to this. There are some good things that Carlton Davis can do. However, though, with the good comes the bad. So what are the negatives with Carlton Davis? Well, the negatives with him is this guy cannot really tackle very well. He has a very high missed tackle rate percentage, even for a cornerback. Last year, he had a 15.5% missed tackle rate for a cornerback. His career is at a 14% missed tackle rate. That's not good. Our cornerbacks in our defense, particularly for Aaron Glenn, they have to be physical. They have to be able to tackle. So a guy that can't really tackle or can't tackle very good, that's going to cause some problems for Lions fans. Number 2 negative, he has a lot of receiving yards that he has given up over the course of his career. Yes, he might not allow a lot of receptions, but the amount of yards that he's given up, again, according to PFF, this guy has given up 3,600 plus receiving yards to receivers that he's gone against. That's not very good, folks. And again, if you take a look at his last year in the NFL, 2023, I think he gave up like 770 yards to opposing receivers. So again, not very good. Then you take a look at the amount of touchdowns that he's given up to opposing wide receivers in comparison to the amount of interceptions that he's garnered from them. He's given up 26 touchdowns and only nabbed 9 interceptions. Again, I'm not a mathematician by any stretch of the word, but that's almost a 3-to-1 touchdown interception ratio for a cornerback. That's a bit of a problem. It's like, listen, yeah, you can nab a couple of interceptions here and there, but you're giving up a lot of touchdowns to opposing wide receivers and quarterbacks. That's a little bit of a concern for me. And then again, to kind of go with the whole, theme of interceptions here, every single year that Carlton Davis has been in the NFL, he has never garnered more interceptions than he has touchdowns. So again, for a guy that we just traded a 3rd-round draft pick for, this is a bit of concerning news for me. And then again, the last part about this that's kind of a bit of a concern for me is the cost of the trade itself. We just traded a third-round draft pick for this guy, so it's like, okay, my instant thought process is the Lions are more than likely going to hang on to this dude for at least a year or two to offset the cost of a third-round draft pick. But my real thought process is this guy going to actually step up and make the Lions, that deal worthwhile for them? To actually say, hey, you know what? Investing that third-round draft pick in this player actually was a smart move. And plus, on top of that, the $14.5 million that we invested in him, if we don't, give him a new deal or try to, restructure that contract. So again, this is something that a lot of Lions fans are wondering right now, because it's like, we could have potentially had L'Jarius Sneed. We could have gotten Greg Newsome. We could have gotten a lot of other cornerbacks. Why did we go after Carlton Davis? And it's like, again, I'm not the GM. I don't know what Brad Holmes knows. I just know that this is what I'm reading. This is what I'm finding in terms of PFF and stats and everything else. And it's like, I'm trying to find the rosiest picture I can point out here, but I'm having a hard time finding something other than just being like, well, why did we exactly make that move? And I know for a lot of Lions fans, the frustration is mounting with them because it just doesn't make any sense. But again, I exercise with you all to have patience, to believe that what Brad Holmes is doing is going to work out, because it's like, listen, Brad Holmes brought us this far. I know it doesn't make a lot of sense, or I know for some people it's a little bit confusing, but you have to trust what he's doing. And again, I'm going to say this. While both of the moves that I've talked about in today's episode, they have some positives, again, there's a lot that's being contingent on these players' ability to play at a much higher or better level than what they've been able to do in a while. Again, like I said, for Marcus Davenport, he hasn't really played at a high level since 2021. That's 3 years removed from the 2024 season. And for Davis, he hasn't played particularly well since they won the Super Bowl with the Bucs back in 2020. So again, it's going to be 4 years for him. So again, when you consider what Lions fans are going through, there is a huge desire, there is an expediency about a lot of Lions fans that they want this roster to get improved as quickly as possible to compete for a Super Bowl. And for them, these moves don't necessarily fit that narrative. So they're getting a lot of questions. There's a lot of people that are like, this doesn't necessarily fit with the narrative of what we're thinking here. But again, I trust what Brad Holmes is doing. I trust the process that Campbell and Holmes have, because you have to understand something here. How was this team started? How was this team put together? It was put together by bringing in players that others thought were no good or were no longer any good, and they built this team around players like that. A.K.A. Jared Goff, Alex Anzalone, Amon-Ra St. Brown, Khalif Raymond. These are all guys that either people thought were no longer any good, a.k.a. Jared Goff, Alex Anzalone, or were considered not really good to begin with in the first place, such as Khalif Raymond or Amon-Ra St. Brown when he came out of college. But yet all of those guys I just mentioned, they are key members of the Detroit Lions. So it makes sense that if that's how Brad Holmes started the process, that's how he's going to continue the process. So again, while these players that I just talked about, Goff, Anzalone, St. Brown, Raymond, they're embodiments of what Brad Holmes and Dan Campbell have done, I understand that it's a bit confusing. The frustration for some Lions fans are mounting. But it's like, I understand that, but you have to keep faith. You have to be patient and continue to trust the process. Again, you have to stay with the person that you brought yourself to the dance with. And it's like, listen, considering what we've seen Brad Holmes and Dan Campbell done, I'm not about to just jump ship anytime soon. I'm loyal to them, and I'm going to continue to stick with them until they give me a solid reason not to. And it's very hard to argue with that when we just got to a conference championship game. Again, yes, I'm going to have questions. Again, yes, I'm going to have doubts. But I still trust them because I've seen what they can do. And I believe Lions fans, regardless of what has happened or has not happened, they need to continue to do the same. But anyway, folks, kind of went on a little bit of a tangent there, kind of went on a little bit of a rant, but again, I feel that you guys understand where I'm coming from here, at least I hope. But having said that, I'm going to end the episode and say thank y'all for watching another episode of MCM Motor City Mania. If you like what you saw, by all means, highly encourage y'all to watch the next episode. Also encourage y'all to please do one of these three things: like, comment, and subscribe. If by chance you subscribed in the past, forgot to do so at the time, or you just subscribed and not had a chance to do so, again, please subscribe. I'm ever so thankful for every subscription that I've earned and deserved. But with that also being said, please make sure you turn on that bell notification icon after you do subscribe, so that way you never miss any more content that I push out. The more content that you guys are able to come back into as soon as I release it, the better it does not only for the channel, but it also better for us to have conversations about the Lions and football in general. Also encourage y'all to please share the content with your Lions friends and family members. Share it here on YouTube, share it on Twitter, share it on Facebook, share it anywhere and everywhere you can with everybody and anybody that you can. Again, the more we share it, the better the channel spreads. And again, the more that we can get people in here absolutely warms my heart. But with that being said, I again hope y'all enjoyed the content. Hope y'all are having a blessed day. Hope y'all are having a great day. And with that, just want to say God bless. And until the next time we meet, I'll see y'all in the next episode.